What if it was possible to have local, fresh groceries delivered right to your door? Think of all the free time you'd have. Well, Instacart gives unlimited grocery delivery for one low monthly fee. Forgot that special ingredient in your favorite dish? Instacart can deliver it to your front door in as fast as 1 hour. You can shop multiple stores, see deals in your area, and save time and money. I've been using Instacart for over 3 years. I started using them in Arizona, and I'm using them here in Florida. I love the time-saving convenience. They pick the freshest products, and they keep my eggs safe too. To receive your first delivery free, follow the link in the show notes so that Instacart knows that we sent you and to help support the show. Instacart. Never step foot in a grocery store again. Welcome to Empowered Within, a soul-quenching, transformational podcast that will set your soul on fire through candid and inspiring conversations. Leading experts, celebrities, healers, and I share our journeys of how we've overcome challenges to living an empowered life from within. I'm your host, Jennifer Pilates. Welcome to another episode of Empowered Within. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's guest, Christian de la Huerta, is a sought-after spiritual teacher, personal transformation coach, and leading voice in the breathwork community with over 30 years experience. He has traveled the world offering inspiring and transformational retreats, combining psychological and spiritual teachings with lasting and life-changing effects. An award-winning, critically acclaimed author, he has spoken at numerous universities and conferences and on the TEDx stage. His new book, Awakening the Soul of Power, was described by multiple Grammy Award winner Gloria Estefan as a balm for the soul for anyone searching for the truth and answers to life's difficult questions. Welcome to the show, Christian.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I already feel empowered from within being here with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's quite the relationship that we have since your book is all about empowering. And I cannot wait to hear all about it because you have an incredible, empowering journey. How did it all begin?
Interesting. Yeah. I write that I'm unlikely to be writing about personal empowerment and what it means to live heroically. Because I lived the first 10 years of my life in Cuba, in a communist country. And so to be speaking about empowerment in a totalitarian, dictatorial regime is ludicrous because there is no such thing. The state owns you and tells you what to do and everything about you. And also my family was very Catholic. And with all due respect to that and to all traditions, it's also a very hierarchical power from above structure. So when we came to the States, I didn't speak a word of English. And I can't tell you how difficult that phase was in my life, feeling so different, not knowing how to communicate. We first came to a small town in rural Georgia from what was a very metropolitan city, Havana, that had sort of the best of European influence and in the 50s, so much of the American culture. So culture shock. And as you can imagine, in those days, especially, they didn't take very kindly to foreigners. So I kind of have mastered this feeling of being the other, feeling different. When in Cuba, under the communist regime, when you apply for permission to leave the country, that was viewed as a betrayal of the revolution. And you were called gusano, which means worm. And I'm talking about even little kids. I mean, my sister and I were third grade, fourth grade. And up until that point, we would always get awards for being at the head of the class and we were good students. From the moment the school found out that we were intending to leave, like no more awards, no more cookies at break. And teachers would actually call us gusanos. I have memories of that. So then when we came to the States, you know how kids are. We're so desperately wanting to fit in. So I, in many ways, rejected or tried to reject my heritage, my Latino heritage, as I wanted to fit in so badly. So after 3 years in Georgia, my family moved back to Miami, where I went to a high school that was probably 99% Cuban American. And so now I stand out again because I sound like a Georgia peach. And not to mention the unmentionable under the surface reason that I was really feeling so different about it's that at a young age, I already knew that I was gay. And, trying to reconcile that with my, in the religion that I was raised, was challenging to say the least. Like my whole adolescence was one long depression. I know self-doubt. I know self-hatred. And power to the teachings that I share about it, that I share in this book. It's like these days, no matter the circumstances, no matter the details of my life, relationship works out or it doesn't. A project succeeds or it fails. In quotes, never, ever do I question my sense of self. Like my self-acceptance, my level of self-love is established and it's unshakable. And so that's part of the message of this book, that no matter what happened in our past, all that stuff can be healed and can be overcome.
How did you get to that place of I'm okay and I am self-empowered and anything that happens doesn't have to affect me personally? Like I don't have to take that as a personal threat.
Long, long journey, of course, right? Coming from self-hatred to self-empowerment, from self-doubt to self-confidence, it's been quite a journey. And I guess the short answer to that is that the stronger our sense of self, the less that we are dependent on what other people think about us. It's like you say, like the name of your show, empowerment is from within. Empowerment is an inside job. It's the journey to self-love. We first have to go to self-acceptance. The beginning, the way that self-acceptance becomes possible is self-awareness. That's the first step, because we can't do anything about something that we're not aware of. We can't fix what we can't see. So that's why the first part of this book is all about understanding why we do the things we do, understanding the mind, the ego mind, and why we get stuck in these patterns of self-doubt, of self-sabotaging behavior, self-defeating patterns of being, relationship patterns that we get stuck in that sometimes feel like we're in the same boring old movie. It's like maybe now it's a different co-actor, a different co-lead, but it's the same boring movie with the same stuff, the same crap, the same issues, the same patterns coming up. And so that was the first question. What makes me do the things I do, and why do I sabotage myself? It was understanding the ego mind from a psycho-spiritual perspective. My degree's in psychology. My father was a psychiatrist, but I didn't get it from those traditional interpretations, scientific interpretations. The way that I finally understood myself and what made me do the things I do was understanding the ego, but derived from Eastern teachings. And so here I am. So that was the beginning.
What advice would you give to those who they fall into that pattern? I'm great. Everything is good. I'm successful. Life is great. And then boom, the other shoe drops. And that's a huge thing. A lot of people talk about it in that respect. They're always waiting for that other shoe to drop. And then there's a self-sabotaging aspect. Do you have any tips for people to understand why and what they can do to avoid that?
Yeah, read this book.
Right?
It's a
phenomenal book. Phenomenal book. I loved it.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Yeah, because it's not like a simple process. It's not rocket science, but it entails the courage and the willingness to look inside, to look within, to understand why we do the things we do, to understand what triggers us, to understand why is it that some people trigger us and others don't, when the same exact behavior or person or situation doesn't bother you at all. And it's got me all tied up in a knot, all pissed off. Like, why is that? So it's a process of diving deep and uncovering and looking what's under the surface. Like Carl Jung, the psychologist, said that the process of enlightenment is making the unconscious conscious, because so much of what the struggles that we face, the challenges that we face, the traumas that we experience growing up, that shook up our sense of self and our sense of how we felt about ourselves, we pushed down into the subconscious. We weren't ready to deal with them, to look at them, to really understand them, because they hurt. But the thing is that a lot of those things were misunderstandings. things that we took on that really had nothing to do with us, things we misheard, things we misinterpreted, things that maybe our parents said at a moment of overwhelm that they then regretted, but it was too late because we took it on as true. Or maybe things that we interpreted, like say our parents got divorced and those young minds that didn't know any better, like took it on personally, like, well, doesn't daddy love me, or doesn't mommy love me, and how could they leave me, and what is then the deeper question, right? This is where we interpret and add layers of meaning to stuff that had nothing to do with us. Like, what does it mean about me that daddy or mommy left, right? So then what's wrong with me? Or didn't they love me enough? What's wrong with me that they didn't love me enough? Where who knows what was going on in the relationship? Who knows what was going on in their minds? Who knows what was, how they were raised about relationship, and their parents before them about relationship. Who knows what issues they were dealing with? Who knows what was going on in their brain biochemistry? What was their substance abuse? Who knows? But we, those little minds that didn't know any better, take it on as our fault. And we make conclusions, sweeping conclusions about ourselves and about our self-worth, about our value as humans, our lovability, and none of it true, just misunderstandings. So the only way that we can do something about that is to, first of all, become aware, right? And so that's always the first step. And yes, it's hard. Yes, it's a journey that requires courage to go within and to face our inner demons, but it is infinitely rewarding and so worthwhile because it makes freedom possible and it makes empowerment from within possible.
In your book, you talk a lot and you dissect a lot the different egos. Like, who knew we all had so many different egos in us? We just say ego. And I really enjoyed how you broke it down. I thought that was really interesting. And then you speak a lot about our soul power and finding our soul power. Will you talk about those two and how they work together and what that means?
Yeah, and they're both huge questions, right? Because you're right, there's so much misunderstanding about what the ego is. Like, most of us who know the word will think arrogance, inflated sense of self. And it is that, for sure, but it's a lot more than that. Think about it this way. If you put a baseball in the center of a stadium, that's what the ego is. Who we are is actually the stadium. And we've allowed this tiny part of our minds, this fragment of our imaginations, to think that it is all of who we are and to make really important, consequential choices about our lives, about our relationships from its limited and always fear-based perspective. So if you think about it, ego means I. In Latin, that's literally what that word ego means. So ego is our sense of self. It's the sense of individual personality. This is Christian over here. That's Jennifer over there. Ultimately, it's an illusion, and both a helpful illusion to leap in consciousness. As far as we know, we're the only species that has a sense of self. And it's also the source of all our suffering, because once we had the development of the ego, that sense of individual personality, when that happened in humanity, Ken Wilber, who writes about this stuff, talks about how that was then mythologized all over the planet as the expulsion from the garden, because that myth, that story about being kicked out of the Garden of Eden shows up in many, many different traditions all over the world. And so he theorizes that that's when the ego developed, because once we have that sense of individual's personality, now we can feel separate. We can feel alone. We can feel abandoned, right? So we can have abandonment issues. We can feel rejected, and we can have a sense of our own mortality. So yes, it's a huge thing to have a sense of self, and there's a price to pay for that. So the connection to power is this. We get confused about power. And most of us, I find, have an ambivalent and I would say conflicted relationship about power. Part of us wants it. Part of us is afraid of it. And I think what we fear is that if we really stepped into our power, other people wouldn't be able to handle it, and they would reject us, and we might end up alone. We also fear that if we really stepped into our power, that we might abuse it and cause harm to others. And no wonder, because all we got to do is turn on the news any given day to witness at least one abuse of power. And then combined with the fact that we've been conditioned to believe that power is a bad thing. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. What they didn't tell us is that quote from Lord Acton was speaking specifically about political power. not personal power, which is what your show's about, which is what my book is about. And so add to that the fact too that we have been conditioned to make the emotions weakness. We label them weakness. We run away from conflict. We hate confrontation. When you put all that into a mix, what happens is that we end up giving our power away. We end up settling for less. We sell out. We say yes when inside we really feel no. And the tragic part of it is that we do all those things for an illusion of security, for a false sense of acceptance, and for morsels of pseudo love. The theme of this book is like, there is a way that we can step into power in a way that doesn't have to be abusive, that doesn't have to be corrupting, that doesn't cause harm, that doesn't require that we push anybody down, step on them in order for us to feel powerful, that we can learn to express power, not connected to fear or force or domination or control or manipulation. And so that's how it's connected to ego, right? I talk about, well, there's different types of power. One is worldly power, the way that the world thinks of power, which is also egoic expression of power, from that limited part of us. And there's soulful power or authentic power. Some of the difference briefly, we tend to associate power with people who have money, who are famous, who are high up in some kind of hierarchy, whether it's corporate ladder or some other kind of organization or institution. But the thing about all those kinds of power, they're outside of us. So they're fickle. Here today, gone tomorrow. The worldly power or ego power is also always has an agenda. It's always trying to grab something for itself, and it's always trying to make itself bigger than it is. And so in contrast, soulful power or spiritual power is inside each one of us, right? Nobody can give it to us. Nobody can take it away. We are the only ones who can give it away for all those sad reasons that we give it away for. And it's humble. It has nothing to prove to anybody. So I think of, for example, of a Gandhi or a Gandalf in their simple monastic robes, their sandaled feet. You would never know how much power they hold until it's called for. And then be careful, watch out, because it's mighty. I think it's mightier than even the worldly expressions of power. Gandhi brought the British Empire to its knees when it was at its global highest point in terms of global reach, without landing a single punch or shooting a single gun. That's power. And that's what's inside each one of us.
Are you ready to lose inches, increase strength, and tone your body from head to toe? Are you ready for a total body, mind, and spirit transformation? I am excited to announce that I am launching my exclusive 8-week Pilates Return to Life training program. This will give you an opportunity to have a total body, mind, and spirit transformation of health and wellness to a new lifestyle. Imagine in 7 days you will feel a difference, in 14 days you will see a difference, and in 8 weeks you will have your new Pilates body. So what do you say? Want to join me on the mat? Head over to jenniferpilates.com today. Space is limited. Use this special promo code EW and the word special, EW special, to receive $200 off while space is available. Head on over to jenniferpilates.com and I'll see you on the mat. Do you feel that that's a place that we are coming to within our world, in our society right now, given everything that's going on? Do you really get that sense that the consciousness is coming forward and people are finding their soul power?
I think more and more of us are for sure. And I think more of us are realizing that hierarchical power overstructure just is no longer sustainable. Like if we look at, take the example of all the riots last year, the I Can't Breathe, systemic racism, demonstrations, that's part of it. That was in response to blatant abuse of power. We're literally like pushing somebody down, literally putting our knee to their neck in order for us to feel more powerful. The majority of the world has had it, like enough, it's enough. And, we didn't frame it in this way. Most people didn't, but I think that's what we're up to. That like there's this system, call it patriarchal, this power over hierarchical system doesn't work anymore. And it certainly hasn't worked for women, right? For the last several thousand years of the pandemic. And this book is for everybody, but it has a particular message about women's empowerment. And it's not to idealize women. It's not to put women up on a pedestal. It's not to give women more stuff that they have to clean up in this world. It's because I believe that the single most important thing that needs to happen in the world is that. It's the empowerment of women. Because when women are in 50% of power, we're going to have a very different relationship to war and hunger and poverty and social justice and education and wealth distribution, how we treat the environment, all of it. So it's because we've been working so off kilter. We've been so off balance where it comes to the balance between the masculine and the feminine energies that run through everything in life, including every one of us. And so that's part of what I think it needs to happen, is this balancing of this power and this redefining of the feminine and redefining the masculine, right? It's like somewhere along the way, we decided that the feminine is weakness. It's like, wait a minute, who said that the feminine means weakness? If you want to talk power, you want to talk courage, you want to talk strength, let's talk about the power of creation that resides in a female body. The thing is that, yes, without minimizing the tragic price that women have paid for this inequity and for this imbalance of power for the last several thousand years, important to realize, too, that men have also been paying a price for that. Because the system, call it toxic masculinity, call it whatever you want, doesn't work for anybody. Mm-hmm. And let's just take a quick look at a couple of numbers. The rate of suicide in the US, very interesting. Men commit suicide 4 times as frequently as women. 70% of the suicides in this country are committed by middle-aged white men, which is still the group that holds most of the power in the world. So what's up with that? How come shouldn't they be happier? Shouldn't they live longer? Mm-hmm. Because that's the other number that's interesting. Women outlive men by 5 years in the US, by 7 years globally. And I think that part of that is because of this limited way that we have defined what it means to be a man. And that's why I added a whole chapter about that. Like upgrading. Our definition of masculinity needs an upgrade, like software upgrade, because it doesn't work, right? Because what happens is when going back to the training about the emotions, the conditioning, because we've labeled the emotions weakness, little boys don't cry, right? That's ingrained into little boys from a very young age, because somebody decided that's weakness. It's like, wait a minute, how twisted is that? Emotions aren't strength. They're not weakness. They're just energy, like anything else in creation that course through our body. That's all they are. They're not good. They're not bad. It's how we express them, whether they have a good effect or a not so good effect. But because we've got this twisted, limited way of what it means to be a man, we walk around like these uncaring, unfeeling robots. And there's a price to pay for that. Because those energies that we suppress, those emotions, don't just dissipate. You can't just sweep them under the rug. We know what used to be spiritual teaching, that everything is energy. Now we know from physics, from quantum physics, that it's true. That means the bodies, the emotions, it's all energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So all those energies that we suppress, they don't just disappear. They get stuck in the tissues of the body. And after years and decades and a lifetime of suppressing emotions, we walk around with layers upon layers upon layers of repressed emotional crap, which we then dump on each other when we get into relationships. So no wonder most of our relationships end up not working. So add to that, those energies have to come out, right? So what happens is we suppress. And then the next unfortunate one comes and says the wrong thing to us or rubs us the wrong way. Volcanic eruption. Boom, right? All that stuff that's been seething under the surface comes out inappropriately. And we cause harm to our relationships, sometimes irreparably. Or suppress. Those energies have to come out, right? And they start seeping out and showing up as physical symptoms, which I know that you deal with in your Pilates and physical training practices, because they start showing up in bodily symptoms as illness, cancer, heart attacks, ulcers, etc. So we've got to learn. We've got to get clear about our emotions. We've got to learn to own them and to how to feel them and how to communicate them gracefully, courageously, compassionately. And we've got to get clear about this power so that we can own our power and stop giving it away, stop selling out, stop suppressing it.
I agree with you. It's so important. Right now, how do you feel based on what's gone on the last year or so in Miami? The power and the things that are shifting, because I know on my side over here, everyone's been living their best lives. I feel like I'm in this whole beautiful different world, which I thank God for. And meanwhile, there's all these other constraints going on. Does that bring up and trigger old things from when you were a child?
I live in Coconut Grove, which is like probably the oldest part of Miami. It's very green. It's very lush. And it's easy for me to disconnect. Like I went from 100,000 miles on a plane a year to nothing. And it's been great. The mandatory timeout's been great for me. It's allowed me, gave me the time to finish this book. It also gave me the time to develop a virtual coaching program that I've known for years I needed to do if I wanted to reach people who may never come to one of my weekend retreats. So I've been really grateful for that. And I've been very internal. I've been very in this within world for the last 18 months and really enjoying it. Like I really haven't taken like more than a few days that I tack on to a retreat here and there. And I'm not complaining. I have an amazing, blessed life. But like taking even a whole week off, I haven't done in 30 years. So to have had that opportunity, it's been a real blessing. And yes, the COVID numbers are much worse on this side. There's a lot more stuff happening on this side of the Florida coast. For me, it's easy to live in my own little bubble. And not that I'm denying it. It's like I have 5 members in my immediate family who work in healthcare. So I'm very aware of what's going on in the hospitals and all that kind of stuff. I'm very conscious of that. And yes, what's happening in Cuba I think it's related to this conversation about power, where people are finally, maybe complicated or taken to the brink by the pandemic, or people are saying it's like, no, like we want freedom. We want to have some agency over our lives, which is the reason. That explains immigration. Immigration gets such a hot topic issue in this country, but it's very understandable, right? It's people are seeking a better life, a life of freedom, a life of choice, a life of possibility and promise. That is what America has always symbolized and has been a beacon for people all over the world. So yeah, I think that's what's happening in Cuba. I watch it with interest, possibility. It's in a totalitarian system, completely governed by force, by military force and by fear. Change is not going to come by easy. It's been 60 years that the regime has been in power. And it seems that with the ability to communicate, the ability through the internet, since Obama's visit, that something has changed. Something's different. So I observe that with hope.
I love that. In your book, you wrote, "In every crisis or painful situation, there is always a silver lining if we will only look for it or allow it to reveal itself." That's so poignant in what you were just talking about. And at the same time, there's people going, are you two really always this happy? Like, are you two really always flowing? Do you not have a bad day? What do you say to those people who are like, I'm in the thick of it and I need to be pulled out, Christian, help me?
Yeah. And of course we have bad days. So, life is peaks and valleys. So there are days that are amazing and days that are challenging. What's different is that we, being in South Florida, we really get the power of the symbolism of the storm, right? So the eye of the storm. And so that's, to me, a level of mastery, that we get to a place that we have such a profound connection with ourselves, our level of self-confidence and self-trust, and our level of connection with life, with something greater than ourselves. It's so in place that we can learn to be the eye of the storm, right? That we can allow all the drama, all people's judgments, people's expectations, the demands of society or family or culture or religion. We can allow all that stuff, to kind of flow around us. We can allow even the crisis of a pandemic, right, to flow around us, and we retain that place of being in center, We don't have to get sucked into that drama. And it's not easy, but it's doable, right? And here's one way that one simple reshift in how we frame things that makes it possible. One thing we know for sure is that life is going to continue throwing curveballs our way. Things are going to happen that we didn't see coming, right? And that sometimes it's going to knock us off balance. Sometimes it's going to knock us on our butts, like the pandemic. And so that we can count on. That's the way the system works. But here's the thing, like no matter what happened, so no matter what happened in our pasts, and I speak about this from personal experience, no matter what happened in our pasts, no matter what happens going forward, we can always choose how we show up in response to that. And that simple reframe pops us out of this victim relationship to life, right? Where we feel like we're just adrift in a sea of ups and downs and curveballs that we didn't see coming, always evading them or falling down and getting up again. Yes, all that stuff is going to happen, but we can always choose how we show up in response. And that simple way of thinking about it changes everything. It pops us out of this victim mindset, this victim consciousness. Poor me. If only mom had done this, if only dad hadn't done that, if only I'd been born there, if I had been born to that family, if only I'd been able to do X, if only there wasn't racism or sexism or homophobia, and not to deny any of those things. Right? All those things exist, and the system is unfairly set up. Right? It's not equal opportunity for all of us. It's the system's stacked. So it's not denying any of that, but it's saying like no matter what, we get to choose who we are and how we show up in response. And we all know story after story after story of people who overcame like the most amazing, unimaginable challenges and did something with themselves. And did something beautiful and powerful with their lives. So we can all do that.
We can. In your book, you wrote that we are the help. And I think right now, and I'm sure you're getting this too, I get it from a lot of people, who's going to show up and help us? Everyone's still looking outside, and it's no, you. We are the help. We're to help make this conscious change in our world. And wonder if you can elaborate on that, what you meant from that in your book.
Yeah, just what you said. But I start the book with a story from my friend Jan Phillips, who's also an author. And so she tells a story where she was driving across Death Valley in California in the middle of the night, and her car stalled. And so, I mean, nobody around. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in Death Valley, but there's nobody around at night. And not even in the daytime, there aren't that many people. And so she kind of squeezes under the car to see if she could figure out what's going on. And in that moment comes another car around the bend, and it bumps hers, and now she's pinned under the car. And so she can't move. And so she can see through a corner of her eye, she can see several pairs of tennis shoes. And she can hear these adolescent boys who's, oh my God, we got to get help. And she just calls out to them. She yells out to them, you are the help. And so it's all hands on deck. The planet will be fine. It might take a few million years, but life will continue in some form. The life will find homeostasis and balance again. Maybe consciousness will continue, right? Maybe it turns out to be an enlightened cockroach planet. Who knows? Whether we make it, right? We're just now beginning to witness whatever it is that we have unleashed on the environment. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at it from that perspective, and I think anybody who has the slightest inkling, the slightest suspicion that they have work to do as teachers, as healers, as activists and promoters for change, this is it. This is the time that we've been waiting for. And I also think about, paraphrasing Einstein, who said that you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness in which it was created. So when I look at the world and all the challenges that we're facing, I think, you know what? The only way that I see us popping out of this hole that we have dug ourselves into collectively, we have to think outside of the box. And in my languaging, it's got to be a revolution, a leap in consciousness, a spiritual revolution. And so that's our work, right? Anybody listening to this, that's our work, to do whatever, to continue healing ourselves as much as possible to continue growing and evolving and stepping into our power. Mm-hmm. And stepping into our purpose as quickly and as fully as possible, right? We don't have time to half-ass this anymore. It's time to start full-assing life.
I love that. Yes, it is definitely time to start full-assing and remembering that we are all one. Our DNA, we are all one. Brothers, sisters, we're here together. Doesn't matter if you're orange, purple, or blue. We're brothers, we're sisters, and we should love thy neighbor. Love your neighbor. Support your neighbor. Check on your neighbor.
Yes. Yeah. And you're right. That's a powerful awareness and remembering. Like we think about different races, it doesn't cut it. Like our DNA is so similar, no matter how much pigmentation we have on our skin, that our DNA is like all humans share like 99.99% of our DNA is identical. In fact, 98.4 of our DNA is identical to chimps. 50% of our DNA is identical to bananas.
So I love that. When I read that, I was like, what? I love bananas.
We can talk. I mean, so when we talk about different races, it doesn't cut it. It's literally one race, one human race.
It's one race that we're all racing together.
Yes, exactly. And we're all interconnected with all life on this planet, on this tiny pebble, this rock hurtling through space at thousands of miles per hour. So we got to wake up. And this revolution in consciousness, what it means is the shift in the way we think about ourselves, in the way that we think about each other's, and in the way we think about our planet.
I agree. And I have very high hopes for us. I really do. I believe the highest frequency is going to win whatever we're looking to win, which hopefully is humanity, a win for humanity. That's what we need, a healthy humanity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. What is one thing that you hope that your readers take away from your book?
Well, to go back to the theme of your podcast, empowerment comes from within. And so learning who we are, discovering who we are, it is the most honorable, most courageous, heroic journey that there is. Exploring that vast universe that is inside each one of us. There is nothing more powerful, nothing that can unleash our potential as effectively. There's no way around it. And so go within, discover who you are. And like we started out talking about, it all begins with self-awareness. So anything you can do to become more self-aware, to understand what makes you do the things you do it, and do it now, because we need you. We need you fully.
Yes. And it's an incredible read. I was sharing prior to going on air that it was a quick read for me. I did it in 2 days, and I'm not the most avid reader. Oh, by the way, everyone, I was highlighting. I showed Christian that I have like my little yellow sticky notes, and I love that. I love the power of feeling a real book in your hands. I'm very old school. I love the energy that I get from it. I can feel you coming through it. And I loved the book. I do feel everyone should be reading it, especially right now. It's so empowering. It really is. And it really helps you if you're uncomfortable with the idea of, really, I got to get to know myself. It's a nice stepping stone to get to know yourself in a very supportive manner. Yeah.
And fun. I try to make it as fun as possible, because I know that it's a heroic journey. And I know that we live in an ADD society, and I know that we're all conditioned to numb out and not feel and get distracted by life and TV and all the drama of life. We numb out in all the ways that we do, whether it's food or sex or substances or work or playing on your computer or social media. And not that any of those things intrinsically wrong, right? But it's if we're using those things to run away from ourselves, it's not a good strategy, because that stuff doesn't go away. Right. And it's only going to get worse. So the sooner that you dive in and you face yourself and you handle it, manage it, free yourself from all that stuff, the better off you're going to be, the happier you're going to be, the more fulfilled, the more empowered that you're going to feel, and the more that your relationships can have an actual chance of working.
I agree. Amen. It was very enlightening and very empowering. And I loved hearing your story, and your antidotes were pretty funny in there. I was like, you made me want to go watch a couple of movies. That's all I'll say. I don't want to give it all away, but you
Thank
definitely
you so much.
did.
Your acknowledgement of the book means a lot. Like we were talking about before, writing for me is work. It's not something like, I know people who love to write and get lost in it. For me, it's work. For me, it's part of my mission. It's a means to an end so that I can get my message out there of empowering other people and helping them free themselves. And so your acknowledgement means a lot. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for having the show. Period, Jennifer, because I know that in your willingness to do that and all the work that it takes to produce a podcast, that you're reaching many people and making a difference in countless lives.
Thank you. Weeping tears to my eyes. Thank you. Well, that is the goal, is to have amazing people like you on the show, sharing your knowledge and sharing the light around the world. Touching one person it's a ripple effect to the rest of the world. So exactly. That's a blessing. It is such a blessing. Well, Christian, now that you have me a little teary-eyed here, we are getting to that time in the show when I ask this one question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is one thing that no one knows about Christian?
Wow. That's a good question.
Thank you.
That's a really good question. I can't think of one thing that no one knows. I think you stumped me.
I love it.
I can't think of one thing that, I'm a fairly open book. I'm also very private. I like my private life private. I didn't want to be in the public eye, mostly introverted, which means that I really treasure my time alone. But I'm also pretty open, like in my retreats and my workshops. Even in my book, I try to be very vulnerable and share my own stories and part of my own journey so that people can relate to it and see that it's doable, that there's stuff, all this stuff can be overcome. So you got me. I can't think of one thing that nobody knows.
I think what you just said was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me on the show and for asking great questions.
Oh, thank you, Christian, for bringing your amazing energy. And thank you for your time and your energy in your writing, which is wonderful. Thank you so much. So please share with our listeners. They'd like to connect with you, find out about your retreats and your other books. Where is the best place for them to do that?
Thank you. And I'm still thinking, what is one thing nobody knows? I'll give that some more thought. In terms of getting the book, it's available wherever books are sold. You can get it at your local bookstore, or you can get it on Amazon. In terms of reaching me, probably the best way is it's my website, soulfulpower.com. There they can access my social media. And for your audience who might be listening to this or watching this, anybody who signs up to be on my email list, they'll get a sample chapter, a PDF of the book on what it means to live heroically in the 21st century. They'll get some of the power practices that are, all throughout the book at the end of each chapter, designed to apply and integrate those teachings to our lives so that they don't stay at the level of good ideas or concepts, information, because we don't need more information. We've got information overload. What we need is transformation. And that's what those teachings are designed to do. And then they'll get a recorded guided meditation about trust, which I created specifically for these times of chaos and fear and uncertainty to help us move more into what you were talking about in the beginning, right? But how do we move into that more trusting relationship with life? How do we be more the eye of the storm?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christian. Thank you again for your time today. We are now neighbors from coast to coast on Florida. So if anyone wants to come and hang with us.
I would love that.
Yeah, we could do a soulful alignment retreat down here. It'll be wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you again, Christian. This has been wonderful. It's my honor to have you on the show. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as we say, until next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Empowered Within with Jennifer Pilates. Your feedback is important. It helps me to connect with you and gives me insight into who you are and what you're enjoying about the show. For today's show notes and discount codes from today's sponsors, head over to jenniferpilates.com. Until next time, may you live an empowered life from within.